Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Business of Boutique Fitness. Now, I'm really, really, really excited today to talk to Miss Khetanya Henderson. Now, she is doing amazing things in Atlanta. We're getting to see some of them firsthand here at Studio Grow. I think it's proof that you don't just open a studio, you choose a community in what you're doing. So I'm insanely excited, dive in deep, hear just a little bit more. So I want to just start, before we talk studio, before we talk strategy, you're at a really pivotal place in your journey sitting here today. So I want to know, what does it feel like at this moment? You've charged through so much, you've brought so much to life, you're sitting here in this great place. How do you feel?
Quick and short answer, I feel extremely grateful. I feel like I manifested this moment. I remember being at another conference last year in the fall, and I said, my next big goal is to present at a big expo. And so being here at the Pilates Journal Expo is okay, so if I can manifest that, what else can I manifest?
Just about anything. Let's just be totally honest. Now, I want to talk about home for just a hot second. You and I are both from the Deep South. I feel like New Orleans and Atlanta are very kindred cities, except when the Saints and the Falcons play football.
Yep,
and then
absolutely.
Then that is a very different experience. You chose to open in the West End of Atlanta. This is something that I think was very deliberate. You were very clear that this was the community you wanted to be in. This is where you wanted to build a community. So can you take me into that journey, that process, that idea where you're this is where my studio belongs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from the West End. I grew up there. And, the West End in the 80s, I'm telling my age a bit, but yes.
You look fabulous.
Well, thank you. In the 80s, just to give some context, the community itself dealt with disinvestment from, larger companies and corporations and developers and whatnot. And so though I grew up in a very culturally rich and protected and peaceful environment, outside of my house are all the other things, the violence, the drugs, and all of that. And so for me, growing up, practicing yoga as a child, practicing meditation. In fact, my father, we joke about it now, but when I was 5, my dad would say, here's a candle, look into it, think about what you did. That type of environment, as well as hearing sound bowls and sound healing in the house was very normal in my house, but in my community it wasn't. And so as my life has progressed and as my career has progressed, I've tried to show up in a way more intentional of how can I help solve a problem? I definitely feel like I'm one of those people that's if everyone just did a little bit more Pilates or move their body or whatever, then maybe we can be happy and have more peace, right? I thought, if I grew up in an environment like that, what if I can present something like this?
And cultivate it. Yeah.
Cultivate it for my community, for the community. Perhaps there can be more happiness or peace, at least to one person, and then perhaps we can then vibrate that out. And so that was my big kind of wishful, dreamy idea and perspective.
When you did the initial moment, when you walk back into that community, you start looking for a space, what was the experience like?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that was an eye-opener for me. One, I would say that my experience as a teacher, my experience in management from big box gym to small boutique, though those were skills I was leaning on, there are lots of skills that I was not aware that I would need to know or lean on. Understanding how to get loans and finances and that type of stuff. How to find a building that would work short-term and long-term, right? Because we're making decisions.
You're growing into this. Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, obviously, first it was okay, where do I want to be? in Atlanta, which I'm sure you're very aware of, in New Orleans,
Absolutely.
there's definitely certain areas where like there's an abundance of studios.
Absolutely.
And and within one block there might be a Pilates studio, but then there's a Pilates heated studio, and then on the other block there might be a yoga studio and Pilates studio, right? And so I didn't want to insert my studio into a already saturated market. And then thinking about my intention, I wanted it to be back in a community that really could use it and deserves it. And so finding the community that was easy. Finding the space.
I think that's a different beast.
It's a different beast altogether.
Yeah.
You're shopping, right?
Yeah.
And you are also shopping landlords as well, making sure that they are solid people that you can work with for a long experience, extended period of time. And so there is one of our clients who is a founding member of the studio. She messaged me and was like, hey, I'm at this coffee shop and I saw this Lise sign come up. You should go check out this place.
I
asked her, I said, well, what was it before? She said it was a physical therapy office. And I knew right away. I was like, I know what it looks like. I already know. So I went, I checked it out, and it was exactly what we wanted.
I think sometimes people outside of the New Yorks and LAs, they misunderstand communities like ours. That's just a 2 cents. When I tell people and explain about the market in New Orleans, and I felt the same way when I'm even explaining Charlotte, Atlanta, so many other things. What do you want people to know about the communities like ours? Like as they look at this, because to me, they are the epicenter where growth is going to come domestically in the next 5 years. And I'd love to hear from your perspective.
Absolutely. I think where LA and New York have maybe like opportunity is that there's an abundance of people, right? And so people are coming through the door and out the door, and maybe that one client or 10 clients or 100 clients, all they want is a workout, right? When you are building a community, it's so important to be specific as to like what it is that you're offering. And for us, I want a space where people can open up the door and release their day. Let their day be outside. When building the studio, we were very intentional. We don't have mirrors in the room. Which I'm sure for some people that's like, oh, whoa, wait, what? We don't have mirrors in the room. Our space has a very specific aromatherapy that we have curated that helps you calm your nervous system, and our schedule is built out to really help you release when you're in there. So for us, community looks like an opportunity to be with other people. Just be like your true self, not the self that you have to be at work, not the mom or the dad when you have to go home to your kids, right? Not the wife or the husband, but just you yourself, and you show up on your mat as you are, how you are. And so community is very intentional, and it's really important to us. We need each other. We can't go through this life by ourselves. And as we continue building, I think one of the biggest goals is that we continue to stay connected, because that's how we continue to build.
And that's really knit into the societies that we grew up and were born into. Now, to get there, you have to have something a lot of people don't want to talk about, which is capital. I want to talk and ask how funding disparities shape not just what you built today, but really how your growth trajectory has looked like and how that's impacted you.
Yeah. So, like I said, going back to some of those skills that I was not aware of, and I would say the process is very similar to buying and owning a home.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Yeah.
But there are some things that you may not think about, like the amount of money you might want to spend on marketing, the amount of money you might want to spend on any type of consulting company like Studio Grow. That's a plug for you guys, because you guys are helping and rocking, and oh my God, you are truly supporting me. I really appreciate what you guys do. But for me, going into it, I didn't have the capital that you would need, right? So I had to be creative, and I had to let go of this picture perfect studio the moment you walk in, right? I asked a lot of questions, and I leaned on my community, so I got some more like private funding, which helped us out with our starting costs and whatnot. I've had to adjust, from my original vision, but now I feel like it's great and it's perfect where it is, and build slowly. And that's something that, if you are dealing with capital challenges, that where the opportunities are is, can you allow yourself to be open and create an experience that's just as beautiful as if you did have $1 million as a capital.
Well, and I think to me what's interesting is from a leverage perspective, most people are like, money is my lever. Like, I have plenty of it and that's the lever I pull. And I think when you say actually money isn't going to be my primary lever, it forces you to get so much more creative. So if you were to look back at like single biggest thing that you did that impacted you that had nothing to do with money, but you were like, that moved the needle, what was it in the startup phase?
Yeah. What moved the needle? Well, we have a 501c3 non-for-profit arm of the company. It's called Pilates in the Park. And Pilates in the Park came about because at the time, so we're fresh out of COVID, and at the time, a lot of my colleagues and peers were like, Pilates isn't accessible. And I kept asking myself, well, what does accessibility mean exactly? We use that word so like easily, right? And I was like, well, all right, if it's just about finances, then how can we solve that issue? What does that, how can we turn this into an opportunity? And so I really love what I do. I love sharing with people, and I have the energy to do it. And so I told my husband, I was like, I want to host the Pilates class outside at the park, and all people have to do is register for the class. They can bring a mat. I have plenty of mats if they need them. And that community grew from, I remember our first class, we had 10 people. And I kid you not, sometimes we have about 150 people out on the lawn in Atlanta. I seem to get away with it sometimes. But yes, if you decide you want to do that, make sure you look into park permits and all the things. This park, there's certain areas in Atlanta that we're not, necessarily under radar. But in any case, building a community, right? Building an audience, understanding your audience, asking questions in forms of surveys like market research, right? Surveys, connection is so important so that you already have a voice there. And so I think that was something that I actually didn't realize I was doing to lead into the studio. But because I had already had like an online presence, but then having a presence in Atlanta and giving back in that way, I earned the trust of people. And so it really helped drive our beginning founding membership and the beginning growth of the studio. That had I had the capital, maybe we would have had some fancy events and all the things, and
you wouldn't have had nearly the impact,
Yeah.
which I think is a powerful thing to realize, is that sometimes I find when we get gritty, it's like the traction that a business gets is so much different. And it's hard to say to somebody who's like, I do have all the money, I have all the capital. And I'm like, that's not enough. Like, that's actually sometimes can be your disadvantage on this. Now, I want to talk online presence for just a sec, because this has been a pivotal piece, I think, for just launching you into this. Now, a lot of people are like, how do I turn digital exposure into brick and mortar success? You've done this really well. So I'd love to just hear, what's the words of wisdom do you have that if someone's sitting there and they're like, I have the Instagram followers, I've got the YouTube audience, but I want to make this leap, what advice would you give?
I would say that something that I learned pretty quickly when working on a platform or working on multiple platforms, because during COVID, I was working on 2 different platforms. One was more YouTube-based, and the other one was more of an app-based. And then I was doing Instagram Lives and that sort of thing. All 3 are kind of different animals to say, but you learn to connect. Connection is so important, and coming from a place of gratitude that people are showing up to experience you, I think is something that can be very valuable when you are transferring or graduating to something different, like a different platform, or to more in person into a studio. I would say also tell people your goals. Let them know like what what your goals are, so that they can cheer you on in the process. Here's the thing, you never know who's actually watching and listening to you.
That's such a crazy point and so true.
So I say be loud about your goals, and you never know what's going to come out of it. For me, I'm actually not a huge Instagram person. And I think
I don't have it on my phone. It's like the horrible thing to admit to people. It hasn't been on my phone in like 6 years.
I'm like, if this is truly a word, I'm an extrovert introvert. I've learned how to be sociable through like my performing arts background, but I love a good moment at home on the couch with my husband watching TV and relaxing. And I'm okay with being like super private, And so something that he has suggested to me was to write weekly emails. And I was like, I don't know what that is, and okay, well, I'll try it. And so I tried it, and it was my way of people getting to know me from a very authentic perspective, right? And from that alone, I have so many cheerleaders who are ready to help you in any capacity. I've had folks get me on in the newspaper that I didn't know were helping me. Have people who are doing PR for me now because they found me on a platform, or they read my emails because I said I want to do certain things. And so I know this doesn't sound like a step-by-step way of going about it, but I say just be loud about what you want to do and ask for help, because there's someone who's watching and listening who might be willing and able to help you.
There's an amazing book written by, I can't believe it, remember it's Columbia or NYU business school professors, two women who started realizing there was this big disparity in women who were getting fellowships and internships, and they were like, oh, they're discriminating against women. And then they went on ahead and did some research, and they went, oh my God, women aren't asking. The name of the book is Ask For It. And I think this is a real issue that we see oftentimes with female entrepreneurs, where they go, I do need the help, but I'm failing to make the ask on this. And I think that's such a critical piece and critical point of everyone else is asking in the world. Sometimes we feel like it should be too much. It should be this. I think that's just a very natural part of who we are as humans, is to seek support from those around us. It takes a village. We know that. Keep reaching up. All right, let's talk about for the second, because this is I think near and dear to your heart. Take me through not just the philosophy itself, but take me through seasons that you have had to like dig in deep and use that.
Yeah. So just to give some context on like keep reaching up, my oldest brother passed away in 2017. And, people come into your life and teach you the biggest ideas, right? And my brother was relentless. He wanted to be an astronaut. And though I don't know if that was possible, but he was the true example of keep reaching up. And so he really is the reason why we have KKRU. The extra K was for trademark issues, but it's KKRU, keep reaching up. And so I often think about him, because I think sometimes we think of like our youth, and then as we get older, right? And I don't know about you, but growing up, they're like, do it while you're young, make sure you have the energy to do it while you're young. And I think when we're young, it's about doing everything, right? As we get older, we start to curate what that means for us, right? And for me, keep reaching up when I think of him, I think of, okay, when I don't have the energy, what else can I do for myself to get there, right? So you dig deep. And so there are times as a business owner when I'm looking at numbers and I'm like, whew, okay, I have to just keep going. I have to keep doing, I have to figure it out. A big lesson I learned in my performing career was that if one person shows up, that's an audience. And you show up with the same energy, whether you have one person or 100 people watching you. And so I often dig into those lessons as a dancer and as an actor, like, okay, when I don't think I've got it, my brother did, so I'm going to keep going. And that's how I keep digging. Any experience specifically in which I felt like I really needed to keep reaching up? I think life just gives us so many twists and turns, and those are always opportunities, and that's what I lean on. I don't get too bogged down or depressed. I do still feel the things, but I try to use that as like fire and fuel to keep moving and say to myself, well, this is all part of it. All of our ancestors didn't get here easily. They all had lessons to learn, and maybe this is just a part of the fabric of my life right now.
And I think when I see this, people often ask me like, what's the one differentiator between like an average, it doesn't have to be a studio owner, it could be any business owner and someone who's doing great. And as cheesy as it may sound, it is always their mindset. It is always the ability to say like, how do I look at what's in front of me and see it not as an obstacle, not as a weakness, but as an opportunity of where this is. And how quickly you reframe that is when I look at people and they're in their growth stages and people are like, how is that person growing so fast? It's how quickly they can reframe something that isn't working out exactly as should be and say, opportunity, great opportunity, let's flow right into this and move in. Yeah. Now let's talk about a little bit about identity, because you come from a performance background. Like I think this is not uncommon in Pilates. We have plenty of us that were dancers and we're in acting and musical theater and a million other things that led us to someone saying Pilates would be really good for your body. I feel like when you step into a studio CEO role, you leave behind some of the performer. You're going to carry it into the classroom. You're going to carry it into those things. And suddenly you have to have this mass identity shift to be a CEO. And to be a CEO in a startup where it's not uncommon that you're like the janitor and you're teaching most of the classes and you are the best CMO in the entire world, or someone who's like, oh my God, I hope I'm the best CMO. How did you have to shift and dig into yourself? Like what side of you showed up in that?
Yeah. So I often think about my life as a student, as a dancer, right? And that you have to almost, like you have to dig and dig and keep digging until you refine a system that works, right? So the repetition, right? And then learning through the repetition are skills that I was pulling in. So, it's funny because when I walk into the studio space, the first thing I'm looking at is like, okay, are all the things on? Is everything working?
Where it should be. Is everything where it should be? Yeah.
Exactly. Then looking at, okay, well, who's coming in and, how, we have notes on all of our clients. How can we then, bridge their class to them and how they're feeling today, right? According to whatever those notes are. And so I shift into like teacher mode then. And then I shift out of teacher mode quickly to make sure they had a great experience, right? Because then I'm like, I kind of have to make sure that relationship is still there and that we're solid and we're good to go and I'll see them again next week. And then once they leave and everyone's gone, then the systems are really plugging in, all the systems that I'm learning from you all and the courses that I'm working with the coach. Shout out to Josh. He's killing it. Love Josh.
He's amazing.
A great coach. But really plugging in the systems, I think, are where
Does it let you turn off the teacher brain?
yes.
Because that's like the hard thing for me that I realized is that I was a really good teacher, but then all of a sudden having to shift back and forth, because you said it really well, where it's like, I come in and I'm looking at everything, then I flip into teacher mode. And it's the ability to say, like, how quickly can I transition from teacher into CEO?
Absolutely. And then on the other side of it, you know, when you are just a teacher, you show up, you let your day stay outside, you give them a show, and then the class is done and that's it, right? Everyone showed up, class sold out, or you had a wait list. You feel good, right? I had to adjust my mindset and I had to check myself, because I remember one morning looking at the list and we had a very small class. And as a business owner, I was like, oh, are they not enjoying the classes? And I started to sit into a negative space, and I had to be also mindful that I don't take that energy into the studio, because it can get dangerous. You know, if you play that like up and down of like numbers, no numbers, and look at the big picture. Where are we in the big picture? So then shifting into more of the business aspect of it. Where are our numbers? How are our numbers growing? How are we utilizing the space? What is the capacity? Where are sales at? How our marketing growth is, happening? And so the skills I'm learning to also support and ground me, that I think if I just stayed in teacher and performer mode of like, I just want to make everyone have a good time, then I'm actually not building my business.
Yeah. And I think you touch on a really important piece, because the numbers are grounding. Like, it's a strange thing. We're oftentimes tempted to look at micro numbers instead of macro numbers. And so it's like, if you look at one class or one email that came in or one review that pops in, those don't really work. Like, they're giving you this intimate little view of what could have been one person's very bad day that had nothing to do with you. And if you're almost forced out to say, I will only analyze on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis of key things, it does change how you look at your business. And I think from an emotional stability perspective, it somehow is like the balancing act that can let you say, I'm riding the waves. You can see trends, whether they're good or bad, and you can access them, but you're not caught up in this like 1 minute this and 1 minute that, because that is really dangerous for an entrepreneur. Yeah. Oh my God. Now you got me thinking about all kinds of things. Now, you've had to have restrained growth. And I actually have to tell you, I think this is really wise. Like, I've had a lot of conversations with people. When I opened my first studio, I'll remember there was a woman who was opening studios at the same time in a different part of the country. And she opened very quickly and without a lot of thought into her opening. And 3 years later, we were in very different places. And it was clear that my trajectory with opening with restraint was going in a much better way versus hers, who she'd opened 12 studios in roughly 3 years. Talk me through what lessons you're learning as you're growing thoughtfully, because this is oftentimes the most successful means in which to grow.
Yeah. So when we were looking at spaces, we had an opportunity to do a full build out. And if you've never done a build out,
they're fun.
Yes. Period. Yes, just be ready to buckle up and go for a ride. And I remember speaking to the developers, because the developers were also managing this space too, which was great because I got a lot of questions answered. And the cost that they told us, I was like flabbergasted. Because I was like, oh, that's just for walls and a bathroom, not even like a cute arc. Or
it's amazing how many zeros they squeeze into that. You're just like, wow.
Right. And I remember at one point, my husband and I decided that, perhaps let's not go a build out route, but let's go more of a turnkey route. And there was still an opportunity to speak with the developers and their architect. And there was a meeting, and my husband was like, you should cancel the meeting. And I was like, no, I want to have it because I want to know this information. So I met with the architect, and we had a full conversation on the cost and where the money goes and how a build out can be. And it helped ground me in saying that, you know what, for now, our first studio will be more turnkey. And it's okay. It doesn't have to be picture perfect, folks. If you have an idea, a vision for a space, what the developer said to me, the best advice he ever gave me was like, just open it up. Like, open it up. And open it up not on, without some intention and understanding of what you're dealing with when you open up, but open it up. Don't let the space just sit there because you're being precious about
100%.
every single articulate or curated space of the studio itself. So we got our keys in, I believe, in July, and we started our first class, like soft opening in August, and it was pretty quick. But I will say this, I leaned on a lot of skills that I leaned on is my management skills and my teaching skills. And the management skills that I had also had some marketing in there. So I was doing guerrilla style marketing and word of mouth, tell your friends, all of them come. We did pop-up classes that were free. Probably won't do those anymore, but I'm learning.
Always good to test things.
Yes, I'm learning. I'm learning all the things now. But they were great ways to get, us out there. So some of the things that I learned right away was that having that startup capital is really important. So take your time in building that if you can, because that will just give you a little bit of a Band-Aid, a little more support than feeling anxious about, well, what are my numbers going to look like next month and the month after that. So that I learned the importance of marketing. I'm learning the importance of understanding what you can start off with a projected budget.
Yeah.
But then there's the
real
realistic budget.
Yep.
Right. And this is our first baby, our first run of it. Our second go run of it is going to look a lot different. And I'm excited about when that day comes.
I love something that you said as we were talking back and forth before this. You said client experience over everything. Client experience over a beautiful studio, over the aesthetics of the space, over all of this. This is something that you have really been very clear on. So let me ask, decisions that you made that were like, this is not flashy, but this is exactly what impacts my client. Like, what comes to mind on those decisions?
Yeah. Well, I remember I have a lot of private clients, and we have a lot of private conversations that often require them to be vulnerable. So for me, the experience is having compassion towards that and sensitivity towards that. That the moment they walk into the space, they are trusting that you can really support their vulnerability.
You can hold space for
that
them.
You can hold space for them. So I listen with such strong ears and with my body. When they come in, I ask them, how are you feeling today? How does your body feel specifically today? And we keep notes. And these notes that we keep, they help us get to know them better and also really curate their experience. And so there are notes that I have like, one of my clients, their son's birthday is coming up and their son loves trucks. So we make it a point to buy a cute little truck for their son when its birthday comes. It's little pieces like that. I have had experience of working in the luxury space as well, and you have to be 10 steps ahead of your client. So I always say in our space, yes, the workout is the default. The experience is really what you're coming for. And so we try to be ahead of their expectations, and we keep an open line of communication. We check in a lot. We email them. We try to personalize their emails. hey, thanks for coming in. I saw that you really enjoyed yourself with so-and-so's class. The teacher told me that you have a graduation coming up soon. We want to tell you congratulations. So it's like really small personal touches that I think really elevates.
But it makes them know they're part of something where this is an actual relationship, because I think my fear that I see in a lot of Pilates studios is that we've gotten very transactional. And transactional can work if you go to McDonald's, okay? That's fine to be transactional there. People are paying us hundreds, and in the private space, sometimes thousands of dollars a month to be a part of this. And that goes beyond transactional. Like, there has to be a piece of this. Now, I think some of this has to come down to the fact you said something, you wrote this into us that I just fell in love with it. You're like, my energy is part of my business plan. And like, I can see the energy you bring, especially towards the client as part of this. But if you were going to say like, what piece of this energy has been like the driving force, what is it?
Strength and joy. Strength and joy. Absolutely. You know, when I think about the industry, and not just Pilates, when I think of fitness altogether, I feel that there is space to exist where both strength and joy can be together. And when we're coming from this space of empowering ourselves, building our bodies, building our minds and our spirit, the energy that you get from that is positivity. And so that's what I hope.
Yeah.
Really.
I love this. Now, let me ask, if someone listening to us right now is like, oh my God, I'm in the space where you were a year ago. I've got massive vision. I'm very clear on when I go. I'm bringing great experience to the table. Resources feel a little more limited. I'm going to carry more than others will into this. What do you want them to know in that moment?
What I want you to know is that whatever you want to do is possible. It may take a little bit of creativity and thinking outside the box. So let's say you want to build a studio. Continue asking yourself why until you really feel your purpose is clear to you, because then the steps will reveal itself. The ways in which we started off was, okay, we need a space. We don't have a space yet, so how do we make this work? Well, we'll rent a space. Okay, that space doesn't work. Okay, well then we'll do it outside, right? Or we'll do it online. Be creative. You know, if you truly want to connect with people, ask yourself, like, how do you want to connect? And then just do it. Go for it.
I feel like you hit one of the things that I see stop people all the time, which is just they hit like the smallest roadblock. I mean, and like if you were looking at a baby, you'd be like, just one decent sized step would carry you over this. But entrepreneurship is about leaping over a lot of things. It's about circling around. It's about doing this. And I think it's something you have done beautifully. I'm personally really excited to get to Atlanta and get to see the space. It's going to be on one of my drives down to New Orleans. I'm excited, but thank you. Thank you for joining us at the Pilates Journal Expo and sharing this story. I'm thrilled that you're going to be on stage doing all kinds of good things. And I'm thrilled to be sharing this story because I think it's a really important one for people to hear.
Well, thank you for having me. I am so grateful to be here at the Pilates Journal Expo with you, and I'm excited to continue working with Studio Grow. They have been integral, and also, if you don't have the information, they are here to help support you.
Oh my God, you're an angel.
Seriously, you guys are building skills in me that I will take on forever.
So what's the funny thing is you weren't our client when I put you on this list like 6 months ago. This is the funny thing is that I was like 6 months ago, I'm like, this is the list of people I really want to talk to. You weren't on there with client, you weren't anything, and all of a sudden Josh is like, no, she's amazing. Do you not know? And I was like, no, when did this happen? I love it. Thank you. And to everyone who's been listening, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of this. We're going to be broadcasting live, I think, 5 more episodes from the Pilates Journal Expo. If this is something that impacts you, share this with someone in the Pilates world. There's so many people that need to hear this and so much we want to see on this. Y'all have a great one.